Yeah, that's right.
So I won't be for a long time.
Saturday.
Well, I think we'll go ahead and start. First, I want to introduce Ashley Davis. Ashley Davis is our intern for the summer. She comes to us from the state of Illinois. So she's getting a good perspective of agriculture and extension work in Oklahoma or another part of the country that she's not used to. She was not used to not seeing cornfields, so or seeing wheat fields. Yeah. So she's had a good. She has she has all the rest of this week and next week at the end of the week will be her last. So she's at the very end of her internship.
Normally you wouldn't see green grass right now.
Everyone keeps telling me.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
Weather
would.
patterns from northern US and southern US.
we flipped for some reason.
Yeah.
So, and our program for today, obviously, is Dakota, and we're gonna let Dakota do his thing.
All right, good morning. So I think I pretty much know all of you in here and probably, I think I've talked to just about everybody in here about this almost. But going over the livestock risk protection program this morning. And this is a program for just setting a floor price on your cattle. Just work a second ago.
Might be different since you're sharing the screen.
There we go. Okay, so the Livestock Risk Protection Program, which I'll refer to it as LRP. So it is a USDA Risk Management Agency program, and the Risk Management Agency is the division of USDA that administers and oversees all crop insurance programs. So it is under the same umbrella of USDA as all crop insurance falls under. So it is subsidized and regulated by the USDA. And essentially all LRP does is protects against market declines on your livestock that you lock in on the program. And so this is not a new program by any means, but it has gone through very substantial changes over the last couple of years. And so it was established originally in 2003 for the very small cattle producer. And so when it was first implemented, it had a flat 13% subsidy across the board, no matter what futures price or strike price you elected to do. And so if the person had 15, 20, 35 head, they were sent to market, it was a option that was built for that producer. But as soon as you started marketing more than 50,000 pounds, this program was not price efficient in comparison to a put or a hedge. It cost too much to do as soon as you start marketing a whole lot more cattle. So it's built for the very small producer. In 2018, with the new farm bill, the program went through some decent little changes. But then after 2020 hit and we went through the whole COVID situation in the cattle market, USDA became very proactive in making a lot of changes to this program and doing a lot of restructuring to make it a very viable, very useful, versatile tool for a cattle producer, livestock producer. So LRP is available in 37 different states, which Oklahoma being the main one we're sitting in here. And to be eligible to use this program, you do have to own cattle to use it. Someone can't trade paper cattle on this. If USDA does catch someone participating in this program that has never owned a single head of cattle, there can be very severe penalties for that person who is abusing the program. So you do have to have an ownership share in cattle to do it. And one thing most of you probably know, with most RMA crop insurance programs, there are specific sales deadlines or sign-up deadlines throughout the year you have to get done by to participate in that program. But with LRP, it is sold and sign up as year-round because we sell and buy cattle every single day. So this is a year-round program you can get into at any time, depending on when you market your cattle. So the LRP program uses the commodity futures markets on feeder cattle and live cattle as the basis for all our prices in the program. And so we're going to concentrate on feeder cattle mainly today, because that's the majority of what we do here in Oklahoma. And so we use the cattle feeder futures prices as the basis for all our pricing daily in the program. It goes off the close of the board every day. So this thing isn't open while the market's open. We go off the closing future prices daily. And one thing that this really differentiates itself from put options, which is also a floor price against the board, is this settles on the cash prices, not the cattle feeder futures. So it settles on the CME's feeder cattle cash index. And so we use the futures price on the front end to set our floor price or our coverage price, but then we settle on what the actual cash index or the cash average is doing at the maturity date on a contract. And so the contract periods that we can do, the shortest one is 13 weeks, and then it goes to 17 weeks, 21 weeks, 26 weeks, all the way out to 52 weeks if USDA offers it. And so the thing that dictates whether these contracts are offered is just the market volatility data. So if our outgoing contracts have a lot more volatility, we may not have a 39 to a 52-week contract available. But if we have a good, steady, low volatility market, then we will see those contracts offered. And so as far as the coverage levels or the percent of the futures price we can elect to lock in, we can do anywhere from 70 to 100%, depending on what USDA releases daily. And so that market volatility also plays into that. So on the outgoing contracts, I've seen up to 100% of the strike price offered on the feeder board, but usually on the top end, we see 99%. I've never seen anything offered in the 70 percentile as far as prices. I see the low 80s up to 99%, especially on our nearby contracts. And one of the big changes for 2021, 2020 after COVID was the subsidy levels. So in the past, we had a flat 13% subsidy. Now, I don't know if y'all can see this very well, but if you're electing up to 100% of the feeder futures price, it's a 35% subsidy. From 90 to 95% of the feeder board, we're looking at a 40% subsidy. 85 to 90%, we're looking at a 45% subsidy. 80 to 85%, a 50% subsidy. And then on the lower coverages, 70 to 80%, a 55% subsidy. So you compare that to 13%, that's a huge increase in the subsidy dollars being put to this program to help get more cattlemen in this program. Now, if someone is a beginning farmer rancher, they get an additional 10% subsidy in this program. So someone brand new in their first 5 years of operation goes in and does this, on the top end, they get a 45% subsidy instead of 35%. So the CME Cattle Feeder Cash Index, these are the 12 states that USDA pulls data from to calculate that index. So the sale barns across these states that report to USDA, CME takes that data and creates a daily reported weighted average index to give us a weighted average cash settlement price daily. And that is a daily rolling price going off of the sale barns that sell every single day that report to USDA. So we're using the futures on the front end, but then we are settling on the cash average on the backside. So whenever someone uses this program, what they're going to settle on is a value that lines up a lot closer to what cattle actually bring at the sale barn, not what the futures board might be doing at that time. So in the past, there was quite a few limitations on the number of head you could do on LRP, but after 2021, they greatly increased the head limits. And so right now on a single contract or a single endorsement, someone can lock in 6,000 head with a 12,000 head max per year per producer. You go back 5-6 years ago, that was a 3,000 head max with 1,000 head max on a single contract. So they incredibly expanded this to fit almost any size producer. And there's no minimum contract requirement. It's 1 head to 6,000 head. You don't have to do this in 50,000 pound loads. And so for feeder cattle, the program is incredibly versatile for whatever a cattleman does in his individual operation. And so we're using the cattle feeder futures as the basis for our pricing, but we have adjustment factors we apply to steers or heifers in different weight classes. So for steers weight 1, that's anything less than 600 pounds. They're taking 110% of the cattle feeder futures for our initial coverage price. Then we're going to take 110% of the cash index in the backside to settle on, because your lighter weight steer brings more market than a heavier steer per pound. So they adjust for that in this program if you are marketing just 5 weight, 5.5 weight steers. Now, steers weight class 2, anything from with a target marketing weight of 600 to 900 pounds, that's 100% of the board and 100% of the cash index. But your feeder board is based on 700 to 900 pounds, and your cash index is based on 700 to 900 pounds. Now, for heifers, if someone's marketing heifers, anything less than 600 pounds on heifers is going to be 100% of the board again, 100% of the cash index. Now, for your 6 to 9 weight heifers, we're gonna be 90% of the feeder board, 90% of the cash index in the backside. And it's adjusted down that way because usually a heifer brings less in market than a steer. So they adjust for that price difference between the animals. Now, one thing that's new for 2021, this came along with a bunch of the changes after COVID, was there's an unborn steers and heifers endorsement. So a cow-calf operator that doesn't have a clue how many steers or heifers he's gonna have, but he knows he's got 100 pregnant mamas out there, he's got a 95% calving rate on average. Well, if he sees that futures board at his marketing time, that is just great for his cash flow to protect his marketing plan on those unborn calves. They're splitting the difference between the lightweight steers and lightweight heifers and doing 105% of the board and 105% of the cash index in the backside. So the cow-calf operator has no idea how many steers or heifers he's gonna have, but he knows he might have 90 to 95 head based on his calving rate, can go ahead and lock in a floor for his cow-calf operation and protect his cash flow and help budget that out. Now, there is a fed cattle side of this, or a fat cattle, live cattle. So we're using the live cattle futures as the basis for that. And so anything with a target sell weight of 1,000 to 1,400 pounds, we're using the live cattle futures to set the price, the coverage price on that. But we don't have a cash index for live cattle, but we do have the Ag Marketing Service 5 area weekly reports. And that's the negotiated cash sales report. And what USDA does is look at the live FOB 35 to 65% choice negotiated price. And that's what they settle on weekly for fed cattle. So some specifics about the LRP program is once we do put cattle in this program, the coverage can't be canceled. Once they're in there, they're in there. And so that's one give and take with this compared to puts and hedges is you can buy a put, get out of a put, get in a hedge, get out of a hedge. Once the cattle are in this, the decision's made, you've got your marketing plan protected and you're in it. And there's no more emotions or decisions to be made with this. You use this to back up how you're going to market those cattle. And if we do sell cattle early, USDA has a 60-day window prior to your maturity date you can sell them and still stay qualified for your payment at the maturity date. So let's say you're going to market cattle this November and we're 45 days prior, the market's good, the cattle weigh good, you know you're making good money on those cattle and you want to go and sell them, you can do that. We still wait till the maturity date we have locked in to settle up with you on it, but we don't care what the cattle actually bring. We don't care about their end weight. We don't care about what they sell for because we're going off that cash index on the backside. So as long as you're within your 60-day window, even if you make good money on the cattle and the market goes back down at the maturity date, you're still going to get paid on your LRP policy because the cash was down under your coverage price. And also, you're not required to sell the animals at the maturity date on this. If we get to the maturity date and you still have them, we're going off the cash index on that day. We're not going off when you sold the cattle. So if you still got the cattle, we settle up with you, you're just back open to the market past that date. And one thing I'll say, the way I can see somebody shooting themselves in the foot and using this program is if you market your cattle very early at a bad time of the market and it does nothing but rally all the way back to your maturity date. So as long as you're doing everything in your power to market your cattle properly and make the most money on your cattle, use this to back that up. And I don't foresee somebody selling cattle at a bad time if the market's down. But if you mismarket your cattle away from how you covered them on this, that's how you can hurt yourself on this. And another thing too is, say if you have a calf crop locked in on LRP and you get to your maturity day, it expires, you get paid, and you decide to say, hey, I want to go ahead and run these on wheat or fall pasture and then sell them as 8 weights in March or April, you can do that. You have them locked into 5 weights and turn around and lock them again as 8 weights for the spring. You can do that on the same set of calves if you want to go ahead and manage both sides of it. And there is a time requirement to the LRP program. So we go off the close of the board every single day. So you have basically from 4 p.m. to 9 a.m. the next morning to get cattle locked in on this program. So when the market's closed, that's when we can lock these cattle. As soon as the clock hits 9 a.m. Central Time, USDA shuts the system down, but we can't submit and approve cattle anymore. So the earlier we get information from you on what needs to be locked in and what price point needs to be set, the better. because I've had customers call me at 8:48 before wanting to lock in a load. And we got it done, but it's pretty stressful. So the earlier we know, the better to get this done. And another thing is a policy has to be established and cleared to USDA before we can lock in cattle. So you can't just call up a livestock agent and get cattle locked in. You have to have an application filled out, signed, submitted and cleared through USDA. A rule of thumb is I say at least 24 hours to make sure that's cleared and ready. I mean, I've seen it a lot shorter than that, but just to be safe, you want to make sure and have your application submitted to an agent at least 24 hours prior before you want to lock in cattle. Just like you have to have a brokerage account set up with a broker before you can go buy a foot or do a hedge. With LRP, you got to have your paperwork done prior to. And so just to go through kind of how this program plays out, this is an actual scenario that played out for a customer last year throughout COVID. So we had a customer that had 180 head of 8-weight steers. The 8-weight was what his target market weight he wanted to lock in. With an effective date of January 7th, that's the day we sat down and locked in the price on the cattle. He selected coverage price of $137.19 with an end date or maturity date of May 5th. And so the full expected ending value off the board for May was $148.38. That was the top end he could have locked in. So the coverage level he elected to choose that day off what was offered was 92.45%. His premium was $1,630 total for all 180 head. That came out to being $9.05 a head, costing a little over $1 a hundredweight to lock in these cattle, lock in that 137. So our coverage we had established at 180 head 8-weights at 137.19 was $197,554. So now, once we got to May 5th, we took that cattle feeder cash index price, that actual ending value. We had 180 head 8-weights at 119.50. The cash on May 5th was 119.50. And most of y'all experienced that after COVID hit and everything. So his actual revenue on the policy was $172,080. So that generated a loss payment of $25,474. $144 a head is what that paid him. And so he didn't lose $144 a head on the market because he had his floor protected and locked in. So just kind of some historical data on the program. Over time, we see in 2020, the top end could have locked in 147. This on the very bottom line, cash at 119.50. That would have been a full total payment if somebody would have locked in the top end of the market of 27.57. And this is the same scenario, locking in around January 7th for a 1st of May maturity. And so there wasn't a 2019 contract offer with this scenario, but we look at 2018 and that far left column, that coverage price could have been 140.62. The cash market was at 137.91. So a slight difference between the board that we could have locked in the cash, but it was a steady market in 18, no real market loss there. And so in 2017, the top end we could have locked in is 122.25. The cash index came at 148.08. And 2017 was coming off 15 and 16 when we had those major fluctuations in the cattle market off the drought and everything. And so in 2017 is locked in a floor, but the cash market came back and we made good money on the cattle. So in 2016, that's when we kind of were seeing that bubble still pop off those highly inflated cattle prices. So in 2016, we could have locked in 163.62. The cash came in at 142.94, $20.68 a hundred payment. And so coming off that rough year point of 15, when the cattle market started going down, we could have locked in a price, protected the cattle, and the market kept going down, and we got compensated for that. Now in 2015, we could have locked in 218 a hundredweight on an 8-weight steer. The cash index came at 215 a hundredweight. So it's good. It's great to lock in that 218 and you're still getting 215 for them. That's a home run for that year. I don't know if we'll see that again, but that'd be fantastic. And so in 2014, that's when we started seeing prices rise. 167 could have been your floor. The market came in at 181. What we wanted to happen was to have a good market, and that's what happened that year. But we look at 2013, we could have locked in 156.13. The cash came in at 135.67. And if I remember right, that was a year where there was a drought up north and we didn't have much corn crop, and raising feed prices really impacted the cattle market that year. And so with that market volatility due to the grains, LRP came in and covered a guy. In 2012, it was a steady market, locked in 150.98. Cash index is 147.85. So not much difference there, a slight payment of 313 a hundredweight. And then 2011 cattle, we could have locked in 122.32. The cash came to 129.35. So the thing I really try to emphasize with cattle producers using this program is this is price risk management. You want to have this in place to protect your operation, to help budget and manage your cash flow, to make sure once we do get to the end date, you sell cattle, you're not losing money because things out of your control just wreck the market or just something pushed down the price of cattle. And so if someone will use this consistently to manage their risk over time, I think they will be very happy with it because it'll give them some flexibility and peace of mind that they're not just going to take whatever the sale barn gives them come sale time. They can use this to help market and manage their cattle operation. And one thing I do like to do is with these new subsidy levels, compare the LRP to put options. So we will look, this is a November put based off yesterday's market. So full price November put to lock in 162 a hundredweight was costing $3,037. That's on a 50,000 pound load. We take a look at LRP with a November 15th end date, we could have locked in 161.98, so 2 cents shy of 162. Our price, producer premium on 62 head of 8 weights, that's just shy of 50,000 pounds, would have been $2,264. So almost $800 difference in premium comparing a put option to LRP. And that's just because of these new subsidy levels we got. It is extremely price competitive to a put option. Now, if you take a look at this and compare it to a hedge, the initial margin on a hedge is $2,900. And so you can lock in a load on LRP for $2,264, or you can go stick $2,900 in a margin account for a hedge. And then with a hedge, you have that risk of margin calls. If cattle market keeps going up, you're going to have to meet those margin requirements. But with LRP, $2,264 is the set lock-in premium. That's set in stone when we lock in cattle, and that's not going to change. You know your expense throughout the whole thing. So just the benefits to the program. One thing, this on the expense side of it, the premium you pay on LRP goes on your Schedule F under crop insurance. So premiums are tax deductible. And another huge factor to this, and this is also part of the 2021 changes, is premiums are not due until the end of your endorsement or your contract. After it matures, that's when you pay for it. And so USDA has a section where you will get a bill the first of the month following your maturity date. And so if you lock in cattle for November, we get to November and there's no loss, the market's up, the market's good, you'll get a bill December 1 after you sold the cattle and have the cash flow to pay that invoice. So when we do lock in cattle, you know your expense, and that expense doesn't come due until after you market your cattle. And there's no minimum contract sizes, no brokerage fees, no margin calls. Once we lock cattle in, we know that expense, that's not going to change. When you hedge cattle, you could have margin risk there. If you're doing a buy a put, sell a call strategy, I mean, selling a call, that has quite a bit of risk to it too, because that could put you in a margin position if that call gets executed. There's no requirement to sell the animals when the endorsement period is over. If you want to hold them and put more weight on them and market them a little bit later, you can do that. We're going to settle up with you at the maturity date, but you're not required to sell those animals. And if you do sell the animals to a new owner and they want to take over your LRP, they can do that. Y'all, we have the paperwork that can be signed to transfer that endorsement, that contract to the new owner of the animals. And with this being done in weekly increments, starting 13 weeks, this is available when there's months with no futures contract. So if somebody's marketing cattle in June, July, we can set a floor price for them because there's no June, July feeder contract. We have May and then we have August. So what USDA does is they pull the numbers from the nearby contracts and have a calculation to price it out for June and July. So if there's no feeder contract, whenever you market cattle, we have an option at LRP to cover those cattle for those months. So the main things I want guys to remember about the program is we're using the futures market to set our coverage price. we're settling on the cash. And depending on what a guy does, whether he's cow calf, stocker feeder, runs all steers, heifers, or combination of both, this can be tailored to the individual operation with the different classes of cattle it has on. So, any questions?
I got one. Heck, I work with you. And I don't know why I just thought about this.
Yep.
So on the unborns, so like say I've got 50 head of cows exposed to a bull, do those cows have to be confirmed bred. Sign up for the unborn, or could I just say I got 50 cows exposed to a bull, they're supposed to calve on X date and I'm gonna mark them 8 months.
Yeah, so you have to have some type of verification to show that you had the unborn cattle. So some type of vet records. Vet
Basically live
records.
calf, like,
Yeah, something showing, yeah, I had these 100 cows, they were bred, because you put in 100 unborn and you don't have 100 calves, there's gonna be some questions.
but I mean, say out of 100, I had 90 calf. I'm still good. I mean, we could just take 10 off policy.
Yeah, so I know I've heard this, I haven't seen it in the policy writing yet, but there is a determination of, okay, as long as you have 3/4 of them or so, you're good.
You're good.
Yeah, and so whatever you lock in, that's what the
It's set in stone, you can't do it.
Yeah, one thing I didn't have in the presentation is, say, if we have some locked in, they die. We need to be notified within 72 hours. LRP won't cover the death loss, but as long as we're notified that, hey, we had 100 covered, 5 of them got struck by lightning and killed, we'll pay for the market loss on those dead calves at maturity date. We won't cover the death loss. So it's covered, it'll cover that price that you see on the market at maturity for those 5 you don't have in the market, but it just won't cover the death loss. But it's a good program. I mean, I've seen it work last year. I've already seen it work quite a few times this year with some guys locking in some really good prices. And so I think if more cattle will use it, it'll do them good in the long run. They definitely won't be sweating taking cattle to sell on either, and the market is products.
You can also sell call above that.
Yep, that's one strategy I've seen people do is people are, instead of buying puts, they're putting cattle on LRP and they're selling alimony calls to further supplement their LRP premium. So if that's a strategy you want to do, make sure you got a really good broker, watch that call for you that you sold. But that's another way you can build this into whatever strategy you've been using on the auctions market. So there's no restriction from using the auctions market and this in production. That's everything I got. Oscar, all makes sense?
A lot of numbers.